Everybody, and welcome to the Dead Unicorn, the tabletop role-playing game club. My name is Corey. I'm here with Tarek, and we are doing a full rewrite of the Legend of the Five Rings book. That's right. It's the Fantasy Flight Edition book, and we think there's a lot of good things there, and there's a lot of terrible things. It's like a diamond in the rough, and it just needs to be, it just needs some love. And basically, we're hoping that maybe some of our ideas will make it into a new edition when that comes out. I mean, this game is begging for a new edition, and we don't know what's going to happen. Like, I've talked to some people, and they're like, yeah, we think they're going to go back to the old roll and keep system of D10s. They might. Or they might do something complete, like they made a new Adventures in Rokugan
like 5e,
Dungeons and Dragons 5e kind of version of it, and they're supporting that. But
I don't know, it doesn't hit the mark for me. That's the D&D version.
Doesn't hit the mark. I know. I think the things that bring people into Legend of the Five Rings is not the dungeon crawling kind of thing. It's the social dynamic of the world.
Generic samurai thing either.
What was that?
Or the generic samurai thing either.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's more the, like you were saying, the social dynamics, the amount of intrigue, the lore, all that stuff is going to be what draws somebody in more than just some flat stats on a page and some dungeon crawling statistics.
So, not to say, like, they tried really hard in Adventures of Rokugan to try and bring L5R flavor into that game. They did, and I don't know how much you read it or how much we've got to do a Adventures in Rokugan game at least once on this channel to try it out. To show everybody. But we like the regular game, and you might say, hey, Dungeons and Dragons can be a social game, and it can be a blah 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 game, and it can be whatever. I'm a big believer that when you want something to be a special part of the game, if you say, for example, in Cyberpunk says, oh, style is so important, you need to have style, you need to
substance,
then there needs to be rules that incentivize that, because otherwise, like, you play Cyberpunk and there are no rules. They just say it and expect you to do it, and you can just buy rags and be an awesome Cyberpunk edge runner, and there's nothing against that. There's no rule penalty for that. Now, a game master can go, oh, but these people are going to treat you poorly because that's just how the world works. But that's something the game master is doing. That's not what the game is doing. And we want the game itself to, like, incentivize great role play.
Yeah. And great storytelling.
Exactly. You got it, man. That's the key. That's my philosophy. That's my RPG philosophy. I know a lot of people disagree. I've gotten a lot of flack on different reviews for pointing these things out. And people are like, well, a game master is supposed to... I'm doing a review of a game. I'm not doing a review of your game master, okay?
Your specific game master, yeah. Every table's going to run their stuff a little bit differently, too. So it's not like we're saying you have to run it in a specific way. Every table's going to want to do what they want to do and focus on the kind of aspects of gameplay that most appeal to them and their player and their, the play base. That being said, certain game systems and certain genres fit playstyles best. And I think L5R is one of those game systems that's in a niche that is not as heavily explored in a lot of other game systems. And so let's get to how we would improve that process.
We want to keep it alive. We want to incentivize, like you said, every table has their own kind of style of role play, but the thing is those styles can be changed through rules that incentivize certain behavior.
I agree.
And here's one of them. One of the biggest ones in this version of Legend of the Five Rings are opportunities. And I have, since the very beginning, have been super critical of opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
So I understand what the developer is trying to do with opportunities. They're trying to make a cool. They're trying to kind of expand things, right? When you hit somebody with your sword, you do the same thing every time. But with opportunities, you can yes and it. And not only did you hit that person with a sword, but now like his armor's come apart a little, or his footing is now a little bit off, or your footing is a little bit better, and you're in a better position. You're trying to increase the storytelling of the scene through opportunities. But what often happens is after a roll is done, people look through a list of 90 opportunities and the game grinds to a halt as they're trying to optimize the opportunity that they want for the game.
Yeah, for that specific role and every specific role that you make. This is a holdover from older editions of L5R where you had this concept called raises, where you could make a test to accomplish some action, and then you would voluntarily increase the difficulty of that task by 5 points for each raise you wanted to commit. And sometimes if you were a school or a character who was really good at this specific type of thing, you'd get what were called free raises that you could apply to these things to make it extra cool. And it was like creative license to do whatever you want with raises. There were some general guidelines of like things you could do with raises at a baseline. And then after that, basically whatever your GM thinks is cool, or whatever the player group thinks is cool, is probably cool to use for a raise. And this, I think, is Fantasy Flight's way of trying to integrate that idea, as well as their own kind of they have these like advantages and disadvantages in dice results that they had in other systems.
In Genesis,
I think this is their way of trying to meld those two ideas together.
So in Genesis, your dice not only have successes and failures on the dice that cancel each other out, but they also have advantage, and I think it's advantage and disadvantage that also cancel each other out. But if you get certain amounts of advantage, you can do things like critical strikes. And if you played the Fantasy Flight Star Wars game, that's how it works. And you can, but I'm not sure how big their list of good and bad things that can happen to you are. That said, there are other games that do yes and. When you do like a critical hit in Cypher, if you roll a 20, you get a GM, not a GM intrusion, a minor,
player intrusion.
Huh?
Right, a player intrusion?
No. It's called a major or minor. Cool thing that happens.
Yeah.
But those things there's not a list of things that can happen.
Isn't it major effect, minor effect?
That's what they are. They're effects. Major or minor effects. You're absolutely right. That's what they are.
Yeah.
But they aren't, like, there's not a list of them anywhere. It just says, Game Master, do something cool.
Yeah, there is some suggestions on some that are very generic, but I think that's about it.
You can always do extra damage, and it says you can choose extra damage or the major effect. So if nobody can think of an effect, you can just take extra damage. Also, every focus has a suggested major and minor effect that goes into like the theme of their character. But we're talking about Legend of the Five Rings, and we got to figure out our opportunities. And I think the biggest problem with opportunities is something we can't solve. I think it's baked into the game, and that is opportunities can happen on every single roll.
Yeah, in a plethora of different places and for a number of different reasons, and all of them are stretch out into so many different tendrils that it's hard to conceptualize all of them at any given time. you really need a reference sheet to figure out what you're going to be doing at any given moment, which just bogs the game down.
So, because it happens almost every roll, everybody's turn is going to take much more time. If there was a way where it could, like, if we could say, hey, opportunities are only spent every fourth roll or every sixth roll, like, that would keep the game running and going smoothly. But that's just not how this game is done. So,
or only on rolls with like extreme consequence or weight in the story. Then
it has the weight roll. But then, like, in combats, it's still going to be every roll because opportunities are important in combat.
Potentially weighty.
So this is kind of baked into the game. It's okay. It's just something we have to deal with. But what we can do is take this list of at least 30 opportunities. And
there's way more than 30.
Kind of bring it in. Like, when I say 90, I think I was exaggerating. But I think it's around 30.
No, I think it's even more than 30. If you consider all of the opportunities that also come onto, like, techniques, weapon abilities, like, there's so many different things that opportunities can come in from.
So here's the general opportunities, and there's different for different ring stances you're on, different for different types of conflicts that you're in. And this is not the only, so this is like 2 pages of a whole bunch of different opportunities you can take. Then there are generic opportunities for invocations. There are generic opportunities for Shadowlands encounters. There are generic opportunities for intrigues and espionage and romantic scenes.
Negotiations,
like, all of that, generic for everybody, and you have to look through all of them to figure that out. On top of the fact that you may have some opportunities that you get from techniques, a technique that simply allows you to use an opportunity that's not on this list. And on top of that, if you use a technique that does like a special thing that's like a roll, it will have its own opportunities underneath it as well. That's a lot. That is extremely too much. But I think we can slim this down. I'm going to tell you what I want to keep. Opportunities that are part of techniques. I think those are perfectly fine. They're on your sheet and they're special for you, and I think that's cool. I like that. But
they're special for how you build your character,
yeah. But other than that, like, opportunities should be way more generic than all of this. We need to boil this down and get rid of everything else that just doesn't matter. Right?
Okay, yeah, I can see that.
Also,
I think...
Also, opportunities are broken down by what stance you're on. And for generic opportunities, I think they should be used on any stance. I think a opportunity, like, if I'm on air stance, now I'm looking at a whole new chart, trying to figure out what my air opportunities are. Yeah. But if we have a generic list that any stance can use, that makes it easier for people to just remember it. And then we can give a discount to certain stances. So, for example, we can say, hey, if you spend 2 opportunity, you can move an extra range band. But if you're on water stance, you can move an extra range band with only 1 opportunity. You get an opportunity discount because you're on water stance.
Or if you're trying to resist, let's say you're trying to, like, calm yourself down. Because you're on water stance, you can spend an opportunity to reduce your strife by 1. But if you're on water stance, you can reduce the cost of spending an opportunity and gain an additional. If you're spending an opportunity on water stance, you gain an additional strife back or an additional fatigue back. when resting.
I'd love to move um strife and strife and fatigue regeneration to earth.
I think that makes sense. Being more stoic in a sense.
Yeah, no one can hurt you physically or emotionally, and you kind of regen that faster.
As a stance, I think that makes sense. As a magical thing, I think water makes sense for healing.
Yeah,
and that kind of stuff. So I think keeping Earth as like a stance. This is your kind of you're recovering. You're solidifying yourself. Makes a lot of sense.
So I'm going to show to our audience here. This is our document that we're using to write down all of our new rules. This is just top of our head. This isn't like we're not proofreading this or anything like that. We're just writing things down that we want, and we'll go through it later. Maybe during the week we'll clean it up. And if you want a copy of this, I put it on my Patreon for our Patreon subscribers. So let's start. We got opportunities, and I'm just gonna get rid of this Earth stance here. Whoops. And I'm going to put it. I'm gonna put it up here. And then, Tarek, I suggest opening the L5R rewrite thing. I know you have the link to that as well, or it's on your Google Docs. Yes, it is in Google Docs. So opportunities. Our first opportunity, and I'm just going to put an O for an opportunity symbol instead of the squiggle mark, because I don't have that font. I'm just going to put an O there. So O, our first opportunity should be for an opportunity, you can lose 1 fatigue or 1 strife, or 2 fatigue or 2 strife on Earth stance.
Okay.
Easy peasy, right?
Yeah.
So we're going to go back to our document here, and we're going to take inspiration. I think we should take some inspiration from the examples of opportunity use on 328.
I think provide assistance to the next character to attempt a check to accomplish a similar task is a decent option. I think on Void it should cost 1 less.
Okay,
so 2 opportunity to provide assistance to the next character if you're on Void stance, because that's so much about interconnectivity and harmony amongst people. If you were on Void stance, you can do that for 1 less. So instead of 2 opportunities, it only costs you 1. Oh, my dog is causing issues. Give me 1 second.
Okay. I like that. That sounds good. Let's see what else we got. I think so. I'm looking at air stuff, and you can act subtly, whatever. Notice, like, to act subtly, I'd rather that be like I'd rather that be like a technique, like a shuji. Like a lot of these could be shuji, and that would be better. Notice an interesting detail. I think there's a bunch of these initiative check examples. And I think air is a good thing for initiative checks. So if you use an opportunity, you can, I don't know, assess the quality of terrain in the scene. That sounds like a good thing to do. Like everything else, like assess a foe's weakness, learn a disadvantage. That sounds like something a technique would do. Doesn't it?
Use your focus instead of your vigilance for your initiative when surprised. I think is still a good one.
I think it's still a good one too. I think that's a technique called, vigilant or not surprised, or those advantages or those techniques people get, that those special abilities that make you not surprised. That's what that is.
Yeah.
That's a technique. That's not a generic thing. And if that's the case, it really gets rid of the whole, like, everybody can just be like, oh, we're just going to use fire for our initiative, because that initiative you can use whatever ring you want. And if you're surprised, everybody's just going to use fire. Why wouldn't you?
You're really bad in that ring.
Like, there's a lot of these in this edition where, why is this a thing? Did y'all just need something for this? Like, why is this an opportunity? For example, on fire, in conflict, during an attack action check, increase the TN of the next check the target makes to resist a critical strike they suffer before the start of their next turn by 1 per opportunity spent this way. So that means it's going to be harder for them to resist the critical hit. Is that the critical hit you just did? Because it's the next check. Is that for this critical hit? Or is it for the next critical hit? How does that... Because there's a technique called striking as fire, which says, hey, if you're on fire stance, you can increase the TN, or you can increase the deadliness of any weapon by every opportunity you take, which is pretty much the same thing, just said in a different way.
Yeah, because that increases the TN to resist it, for sure.
It's so stupid.
Well, actually, it technically changes it dramatically, because in order to resist a critical strike, you have to make a TN1 fitness check, and
right.
Every success you make over that decreases the severity by 1.
Right.
So if you increase the base TN to resist the critical strike, every success after that only reduces the severity down by 1 after you've made, like, if you increase it by 4 and it's a TN5 to resist that critical strike, and they roll 6 successes, normally that would take the critical strike from like 7 to 2, but now it's only taking it down from 7 to 6 because they've only had that 1 extra bonus. You see what I'm saying?
Right. But if you just increase the deadliness, let's say you have a weapon with a deadliness of 5, like a katana, right? And you increase the deadliness by 3, and you increase the TN, and then somebody else uses this fire opportunity to increase the TN by 3, right? If both people get 3 successes, they still take 5. Everything above 3 successes is still the exact same damage. The only difference is below that TN, the ceiling is capped if you don't increase the deadliness. So at 1 success, 2 success, and 3 successes, you're still taking a crit at 5. Whereas at 1 success, 2 success, and 3 successes on striking and fire, you're taking a crit at 8. But or 8, 7, and 6. But that's like such a small difference. I don't think that's a warranted difference in my book. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that's huge.
I feel like it's a big technicality area that is such it's such in the weeds of technicality that all it's going to do is, again, bloat out the time it takes to suss out all of the details and leaves room for ambiguity that doesn't need to be there.
All it feels like is I spent 3 XP on a technique that does something that I could already do.
Yeah, that also feels, again, it feels like it's bloating out stuff and leaving room for ambiguity, because is this like, also, The way it reads to me is this was intended to be like, oh, you missed, but you had a bunch of opportunities on your attack roll. Don't worry, you were on fire stance. You can just spend all those opportunities to make your friend's next attack on that person even more critical, because you've moved them into a position where they now can't defend.
Maybe.
Right? That's what this feels like it was intended for.
It's not supposed to be for your critical hit. It's supposed to be for somebody else's critical hit.
Exactly. So that's what it feels like it was intended for, but because of the wording and all of the other systems that are in place, it makes it feel ambiguous that you could argue, well, it is for my attack, not because I happen to have 5 opportunity in addition to my 2 successes to hit the person. So I'm going to spend my 2 to do a critical strike and then spend 3 more to increase the difficulty of their check to resist my critical, all this. And so it just gets more and more.
It gets more and more complicated and slows everything down.
Exactly. And that's what I'm saying. It is unnecessary bloat.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Especially when we can just say, hey, the next person that does something similar to this gets a assist.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Doesn't that work way better? Easier. Mm-hmm. Better to understand. It sticks in your brain.
Or spend 2 opportunity to give the next person who is attacking them not just an assist, but an extra opportunity, an extra kept opportunity.
Yeah, extra die set to an opportunity. Why not?
That person can use it as to increase their critical strike. If they do a critical strike, maybe they can enact a better technique. Whatever. It just becomes cleaner, easier, and simplified. There's already a bunch of techniques and other things that let you use an opportunity or a skill check or a technique to set a die kept to a specific value. Why not just keep that rolling? That's very simple. It's easy to understand. There you go.
Okay. Let's just go down the list and see if we just want to keep it or ditch it. The first one, under any, on 328. If you failed, determine the easiest way to accomplish the task you were attempting, skill and approach. Good or something we can just, I'm not going to say it's bad necessarily, but just something that is unnecessary. All right. While you're thinking, I'm going to give you my, okay, go ahead.
I'm of 2 minds here, because for someone like me, I think get rid of it, because it again slows things down, bloats it up, and most people aren't going to use this. Most people, I think, will just roll with the punch and be like, oh, I failed. Okay, whatever. And a lot of times rolls that are made don't necessarily have a redo button to like, okay, let me try again, let me hit. This insists upon allowing your players to retry rolls over and over and over again with different approaches, right? Which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but I wouldn't think as seasoned players and seasoned GMs that would arise very often. But having this in the game makes it so it almost insists that they be allowed to use this anytime and have an answer specifically for what should I do to make this work next time. That being said, so if it was just me and I was thinking in terms of myself, I'd say get rid of it. Not useful. That being said, I feel like there are so many new people who come to games and would benefit massively from this over the first couple of game sessions to know, okay, well, I didn't really understand what the approach and ring that I needed to use, or skill and approach that I need to use for getting this ring that I wanted. How do I get that better? There's probably a better way to approach solving this problem in the early stages of your gameplay experience. If you're new to L5R, you're new to this Fantasy Flight system, then having shoehorned in an opportunity to solve a problem that may not actually be a problem, or that may necessarily not be solvable, right? If you fail to sneak up on the blood speaker as they're performing the ritual, you can't just spend an opportunity and be like, let me redo that because I'm actually really stealthy with this ring instead of that ring, so now I can make that check. You know what I mean? Like, learning from your mistakes should be something that you can do. It should not insist that you get a retry for that mistake. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think it's okay. I will add it to the list, but I want to add a caveat to it that it does not work versus an NPC. Right? Because NPCs are more dynamic. They can change the same way you can change to make things harder, or So, just generic tasks. If you're like picking a lock, if you're climbing a mountain, if you're, it does not work against NPCs.
I would also put a caveat of like, this does not ensure that you can get another retry of a check that you recently failed.
This does not ensure a new roll to accomplish a
Exceed a failed check. Yeah.
Yes. It just tells you. It can just tell you after the fact, hey, now that I look at it, maybe I should have used water stance, or maybe I should have, used smithing instead of design,
Yeah, exactly. And that's for future reference. Like, the next time you have to do something like this, you'll now know a better combination of skill and approach to use. That makes it a little bit more boxed in and functional for its purpose.
Okay, so remove one strife gain. It's opportunity plus. Remove one strife you gain from this check per opportunity you spent this way. So you can just like negate all of the strife you have by getting rid of all of your opportunity as well. I don't like this. I'd rather just change that to the one we have: lose one fatigue or strife, or lose 2 fatigue or 2 strife on Earth Stance.
I mean, I'm fine with getting rid of that. Strife management is one of the most important things to this game system, especially in combat scenarios and like conflict scenarios. But there are a multitude of other ways that you can approach dealing with strife management. Mm-hmm. You don't need an opportunity to do that. And it kind of takes away the need for those other opportunities or even stances like Void Stance.
Yeah.
If you can just always get rid of the opportunity or the strife on a die because you have opportunity. And it also increases the confusion of, if I have rolled dice that have strife on them and I can negate those strife, that's something everybody always asks you during gameplay of like, oh, I have the bleeding condition, but I'm getting rid of the strife before I ever take it. Does that count as not bleeding? And again, it just confuses things a little bit more.
Yeah, that's right. Also, if y'all are watching live or watching this as a recorded stream, like, tell us your thoughts. We do want to know what you guys are thinking. A lot of times I'm in my little gaming bubble where I play with Tarek all the time, and we kind of have a little bit of groupthink going on. So talking to people outside that bubble is super important. Okay.
Yeah, you can only be devil's advocate to such a degree, right?
By the way, I think I'm one of these things where it said I wrote lose 1 fatigue or 1 strife for an opportunity. Like, you can only use an opportunity once. I think that should be lose 2 fatigue or 2 strife. And if you're on Earth Stance, you lose 3. I think that's better.
That sounds perfectly fine.
Yeah,
that's a great amount, but that's fine.
I don't think it's an excessive amount. I think it's a good amount, especially because
it's a big amount, not an excessive amount.
No, it's not.
It's a healthy amount
that keeps you in. That keeps you in the combat and keeps you running. I think that's good, especially
I agree.
In the face of weapons that can do like 8 fatigue because somehow it's a staff that does 8 fatigue. Okay.
Because it really touches. Art's real good.
The next one, provide assistance. We did that. Learn another character in the scene's demeanor.
I don't mind that, but I again, I agree that that could be a technique.
That's a
easily.
that's a shuji. That's a
That's a
shuji.
shuji. So just know a demeanor, and not just demeanor. I would make that shuji do more than just demeanor. It would be like learn a demeanor, a disadvantage, an advantage, strife level, and you get to choose one of those, and you can maybe spend opportunity to learn more.
All right.
That's what that.
Air, act subtly to attract minimal attention to your efforts. Again, this could be a shuji.
Nobody ever uses that except I don't think in the entire history of us playing together, nor in any of the other games that I've played outside of the ones that we have played together specifically for this edition, have I ever seen anyone use that except for me.
Yeah.
I have used it multiple times and just felt like this is me throwing my opportunity into the void just because I made a check that was kind of supposed to be stealthy or like subversive, and I'm just throwing those opportunities into the void to hope that you don't allow somebody to immediately react to it. That being said, even if you did immediately react to it afterward, I would have been like, perfectly cool. We could remove that entirely because this should be a consequence of the action of subterfuge in some way, or a technique to let you act without letting somebody know what you're on to.
If there was like a rule attached to this somewhere in the book that, like, what does that mean? Act subtly to attract minimal attention. What is minimal attention? How many? And it's you can spend multiple opportunity for this. So does that mean I'm supposed to spend an amount of extra opportunity makes it even subtler? What does that mean? How does that work mechanically? Like,
so in my mind, how it always works, and this is just in my head canon for this was I need to spend enough opportunity to beat somebody's vigilance, and then if I beat the highest number of vigilance in the group, everybody just does not identify that. That being said, there's no place in this entire rule set that says that that's the case. This should be a technique that lets you it's a technique that just lets you spend opportunity, and it says if you spend equal to the highest vigilance in the room or in the area, then nobody notices you do the thing. And that's it. That's a technique. That's a level 1 shuji or a level 1 ninjutsu that just lets you be subtle about things. There you go.
Boom.
Rules. Doesn't need to be an opportunity. In the general list, it just needs to be a technique. This is a technique that got trapped into Shuji land.
Notice an interesting detail about a character in a scene such as an anime. We've already taken care of that. Okay, Earth. Reassure another character in the scene with your presence, allowing them to remove 2 strife. We can just add that to our lose 2 strife or lose 2 fatigue or lose 2 strife. We can just add that. We can
to extend to you or an ally within a certain number of range bands to you.
Or remove it from an ally within 2 range bands. Done. All right, hold on. YouTube wants me to put in some extra security for some reason. It's like, verify this is you. I'm in the middle of a stream, YouTube. Could you?
Yeah. You're not right now, YouTube? You not get up in my skis?
Okay. The next one is act carefully to minimize the consequences of failure or other danger that could arise from the task. This one I'm actually really good with. I like this. That said, we are adding something called, and if I can put it back up on the screen, consequence and complications. So a consequence and complications are already going to be gotten rid of with opportunity and bonus successes inherently. So we don't have to make this an opportunity.
Yeah.
But
this is just an extension of the rule that we described before.
Yes. But I'm going to write it down as an opportunity. I'm just going to be like, oh,
to reinforce that's how you
to reinforce this. It's on the list so people will remember, oh yeah, I should get rid of the consequences. It's like, negate. It'll be O plus negate opportunity, or negate, I'm sorry, consequences or complications that arise from the task. Done. And if you guys want to know what we mean by consequences and complications, watch our previous video. This is a part 2 video.
Into very deep, very detailed coverage of that idea.
So we go back to this. The next one is suddenly recall an important piece of information not directly related to the task.
You know what this is, in my opinion? You know that spell Fukurokujin's Wit that a lot of people just start with? that spell that just gives you, all it does, you have to make a TN2 like fire check, theology fire check, and it gives you 1 die set to an opportunity to be used in the next like scene. That spell should instead be this thing. Recall a piece of information that you learned, because it's Fukurokujin, the fortune of knowledge. That spell gives you a piece of information that you need that is relevant to the scene that you are currently in. It is a spell invocation that just lets you know something that is important.
But with that spell, you can say precisely what that piece of information relates to. Here, it cannot be related to the task. It is something a game master can use to make people remember other things that they may have forgotten about the adventure. And that's how I've used it, even though people, when I give them something, they're like, yeah, I remember that. I don't need...
Still, yeah, it's a way to point. I get that this is like the common sense advantage used to be. Remember that advantage?
Yeah.
This is like the common sense advantage. That being said, I don't mind it as a like, here's information to be found. If you want to keep it, I would say keep it, but instead of being I would say it costs, you can keep it as 2. It costs 1 less if you're on Earth stance, because Earth is all about recall.
I would also group it in with under fire. Notice something missing or out of place, not directly related to the task. Water. Yeah. Spot an interesting physical detail in your environment, not directly related to your task.
Yeah, all of these do the same thing.
All of these are the exact kind of same thing.
It's a general one that gives you different types of information based on the ring you're on.
Yeah, so like for this opportunity, it would be the GM gives you a piece of information about the plot, the environment, or your own character that is not directly related to the task your character is performing.
Yep. I think that makes perfect sense.
And you want it to cost less on Earth?
I think if you're going to generalize it to that depth, I'd say I'd make it one opportunity based on the type of information. Well, if we're not doing it so that the player controls
that complicates things. I think depending on what stance, it costs less for this or that. No, that's way too complicated. Too complicated. I would say void, maybe.
Void, yeah, I could see void. I could definitely see void.
So 2 or 1 if on void.
Yeah.
Well, it can always be changed later. We can always like fine tune it, or like I said, this is just top of our mind stuff. Top of our mind stuff.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Fire. Opportunity. Inflame a character in the scene with your presence, causing them to receive 2 strife.
This is just a way to give another player strife that isn't a technique. I think every player, I like the idea that any player can strife somebody else out, because if you're annoying enough, to somebody, you're going to strife them out regardless, right?
Right.
Like that just makes sense to me. I don't mind this one. I think it's a fiery thing to do.
Another give another
I'd
character.
say make it a generic one. Say if you are on fire stance, it costs one less, or deals one more strife.
I like that. I like the give another character in the scene one strife, or two if you are on fire stance.
Yeah.
I like that. And it costs one opportunity. I like that. That's good. Good rule.
Yeah.
Next. Perform the task in a flashy way, drawing attention to yourself. Extra opportunity attracts even more notice. Some people have used this. I have no idea how to like represent this. Does somebody get more glory because they use this? Doesn't say. How does this work? And how do people ignore it if they want to ignore it? Like, does an NPC if you don't get their vigilance, then I don't.
Yeah, this is another technique parading as a opportunity, I think.
Yeah, and it needs to be fleshed out better. A better rule about it that makes it work better.
Yeah, this is like the Coma Bard technique of old of like when you make a check, if you do a certain number of raises, you get that much extra glory.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? That's what this is to me. That's what this screams to me.
Okay. Notice something missing or out of place in the vicinity that is not directly related to task. We already did that. Remove 2 strife. We did that. Perform in a task efficiently, completing it more quickly or saving supplies. This isn't bad.
This one seems fairly straightforward, yeah.
Right? So the Game Master says, hey, it takes an hour to do this. Well, I spent an opportunity and now it's 40 minutes. I spent another opportunity, now it's 30 minutes. You know?
Yeah.
But it doesn't say how much time it reduces. And I don't think that's a bad thing.
Yeah. Leave it to the GM's discretion.
Yeah.
If it's a particularly difficult task that takes number of days, maybe it takes a day less per opportunity you spend, or maybe it takes only a couple hours less per opportunity you spend. It depends, because those situations are going to be so much more like dependent on what the situation you're using this opportunity in, that leaving it to a GM's discretion is probably the best.
Yeah, like I am my gut instinct, my old Dungeons and Dragons 2nd edition instinct is to say, oh, for every opportunity it costs 10% less or takes 10% less time. But
that
then
not make sense.
But then I'm just like, don't do that. That's, you know, we're not playing a simulator, a like Forge simulator. We're not playing a game to do crafting all day. I'm looking at you people out there playing video games just to I hate crafting in role-playing games.
You're looking at me during that argument we had about crafting in Skyrim.
I hate crafting. I hate it. I hate it. If that's your jam, cool. Developers, please don't make it a requirement. I don't want to do that shit. It's the only way to get the best weapon in the game. I want to find the best weapon. Why isn't the best weapon something I can just find? Come on.
Let me hunt for the the Great October.
I had a friend who would do Skyrim runs where he would just spend hours. The first thing, just find the forge, spend hours doing forge, get everything up to max, get the forge himself the best armor and weapon, and then go out and play the game. And I'm just like, you're wasting your life. You're literally getting older before my eyes. But this is not a bad thing. I think this is fine.
Yeah, I think it can help, especially in like there's so many situations I can think of right now off the top of my head where this could be relevant and helpful to a player and a GM. Like this has so many different points of relevance that it's fine.
I think
It's not
you
too
get
overpowered. It is completely within the discretion of the GM. Not bad.
you get an extra opportunity uh, for this when on water stance.
You like it on water?
Well, it is a water. This thing is from water.
Yeah.
I guess that's fine. All right. On void, choose a ring other than void. Reduce your TN. Reduce the TN of your next check by 1 if it uses that ring. This is complicated. It doesn't seem complicated, but trust me, it is.
Yeah. The amount of time it's going to take to track down the next turn that they use it on.
We've gone through an entire round now. Does anybody remember what happened? Nobody's going to remember they did this. Nobody's going to remember what ring they said. Nobody's going to... It's complicated. It's too complicated. Just give yourself +1 on your next check. Right? Reduce the TN of your next check by 1. That's it. That's all you need. And I don't think that's a bad opportunity, especially for void. 2 opportunity or 1 opportunity on void. Reduce the TN of your next check by 1.
Boom.
Boom. All of this like stance stuff, the different stances, make things way more complicated and slow things down. I like stances. I think stances are great. I think opportunities by stances are the worst.
Yeah.
What else? You feel a chill down your spine and notice a sudden silence or detect another sign of supernatural if there's spiritual disturbances in the area. This is for, like, you should have a spiritual detecting advantage or technique or something. Everybody shouldn't be able to, like, do this. If a ghost wants you to feel a spiritual presence, then the game master should say everybody feels a chill down their spine.
Exactly. I agree wholeheartedly. This has been an opportunity that I've looked at a lot and been like, when will I use this? The only time I can ever justify using this is if we're in a situation where it would make sense to feel some kind of eerie presence in the area. Otherwise, if I spend opportunity on this, I feel like I'm just going to be wasting my time and wasting my opportunity.
Did the game master put a ghost?
There's nothing here.
Did the game master put a ghost into this plot? If he did, he's gonna let you know. And if so, you're not gonna have to use this. And if he didn't, then using it is a waste because there's not gonna be one. It's like, what?
Did your GM hint that they put some kind of crazy like thing in the plot, like a haunting of a castle or something? No. Probably not relevant then. Probably never going to use it.
And what
I get why you want this as like a spiritual character, and that's your main focus of your character is their spirituality and how they are in tune with all of these things. But most likely not going to get used very often, if at all, and probably best kept to a character who took a technique to be able to do that on the fly. You're using a technique to actively prompt your game master to say, I would like to interact with this stuff. This is the kind of character I made, and that will encourage them to make opportunities for this stuff to be relevant.
Exactly. And there's already there's already a ritual for summoning a ghost and then talking to them. Already. Exactly. It's already there. You can feel their presence with that technique. You can summon them and ask them a question, and you can make them make a block of ghost ooze.
Yeah. Get their ghost hair and make a ghost statue to their ghost.
The last one, gain spiritual insight to the nature of the universe and your own heart. The GM discretion, you may establish a fact about your character that has not been previously revealed but relates to the situation. This should be part of the description of the meditation skill.
Yeah. This should be a part of the meditation skill. And also, this should be something that you define ahead of time with your game master during your 20 questions.
Yeah. So, again,
here are the things that I have not brought up about my character that I don't want brought up about my character until there is an appropriate point with which to do so. Or maybe this is an idea that I have about my character's future state that I want to get to at some point. You tell me when it's appropriate to release in plot, or maybe I will tell you when I feel comfortable that it is something that can get revealed in the course of the game. That is like so many of these things. I get the feeling were devised with the idea that people play L5R a lot in forum games, and a lot of these things make a lot more sense if you're playing in that context, in a play-by-post forum game environment, and way less sense in the situation of we are all sitting at a gaming table and playing in real time, because a lot of these things just won't make sense in real-time communication.
Yeah. Yeah. And it feels like if I'm writing an adventure for Legend of the Five Rings, that I have to fill in all of these little gaps in detail. I guess I have to put a ghost in every single one of my my adventures.
In every scene, so that if somebody gets this opportunity, they have something to interact with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, air. Now we're into conflict and martial skill examples. So air, add a kept die set to opportunity for your next martial check. We've kind of taken care of that. During a movement action check, up to one range band of any different distance, you may move. One opportunity per spent this way may be along a vertical surface. This is so...
Thing, clean up the verbiage. 100%. Clean up the verbiage. Movement made maybe along a vertical surface for every opportunity spent this way.
Yeah. So basically, when you see like Neo running on the wall for a little bit, that's what it's trying to simulate. In which case, are we anime characters now? I don't...
Yeah. We have always been anime characters.
Yeah, we've always.
You know this right now, but we are in the middle of an anime protagonist. We're about to get isekai'd.
Yeah, this should be a technique.
We're about to run through both of our houses and isekai us away into L5R land.
This should be a technique. First off, it should be a technique. Second off, people read this and think it is extra movement.
Yeah.
It's not extra movement. It's the same. You're moving the same amount.
Completely justifiably, and I'm not saying that because I am the one who made that mistake multiple times.
It's easy to make that mistake, but this, like, doing something cool and supernatural should always be a technique.
Yeah.
Even if it's like, I would call this either a martial or a ninjutsu technique. I think running on the side of a wall, a bushi could do. I don't see that as, it could be a kata. I think this would be fine as a kata.
Or even I could even see it as like a monk thing, where as a kiho, you could run up against the wall.
Yeah. But to have everybody just be able to, like, I'm a peasant. I'm going to run up on the side of a wall for, like...
Because of Asian themes. Because this is wuxia, and because of that, everyone can run.
Everyone can do it, yeah. Like, Jackie Chan always meets everybody else who can do kung fu for some reason.
Exactly. We all are kung fu.
He just walks down the street and suddenly, like, he hits somebody's shoulder, they drop their food. It's a kung fu match. This guy knows kung fu too? Sure, whatever.
Everyone is kung fu.
Okay.
That tree is kung fu.
For 2 opportunity on air stance, increase the TN of the next martial arts range check targeting you before the start of your next turn by 2. Nobody's ever used this before in my game.
Because ranged attacks don't have... One, they don't happen super often. outside of spells and specifically in combats where the range of the combat is very far to start with, which playmats and stuff don't usually encounter it. And so because of that, there's not really a huge pull for it. And if you're going to add TN to hit to yourself or somebody else, why not spend the opportunity doing that more directly using some other technique like obscuring terrain? Like make that, what is that one that makes obscuring terrain for you or puts you into obscuring terrain?
There's a fog one. There's a darkness one. There's a couple that do that.
There are so many other ways to increase your TN, and if you're already on air stance, you're most likely adding 1 or 2 to your TN already based on what rank you are.
Yep.
So like, there are better ways to make. This is so specific of like only martial arts ranged.
You're right. Like with this, if you spend 2 opportunity to increase your TN by 2 against range attacks, and you're on air, it's minimum a +3 TN to be hit, which means you're just not going to be hit. There's no hitting you because you're at a low rank, and your enemies are going to be at a low rank if it's balanced. If it's balanced. So this is cheating.
Yeah, and this is just a cheat for ranged attacks specifically.
And if you're, I mean, it's not cheating. It's in the rules, but it's like it's unbalanced. It's an unbalanced.
And if your opponent isn't attacking you at ranged, it's useless.
And secondly, if you're high ranked, right, you're just gonna roll your fitness and move across the map super fast using a maneuver check. And it's gonna be like, I'm shooting you with an arrow. Whoop, that person's right in front of me now. Like,
or I'm shooting you with an arrow. Oh wait, you're out of range some now suddenly.
Yeah.
Or you're hiding behind a pillar and now I can't hit you. Like there are so many other ways to manipulate the situation with terrain, with battle maps and stuff like that. That you don't, like, in my opinion, you don't necessarily really need this.
Yeah. Not to say that maneuver is a bad rule. I do like the maneuver rule.
Yeah, maneuver's good.
Even though the maneuver rule is really complicated, it's one of those complicated things we're gonna have to uncomplicate.
You have to streamline.
Yeah. Anyways, let's keep going. I mean, we're over an hour now. Oh my goodness, and we still haven't cracked this thing. Increase the okay, we did that one. During a movement action, ignore 1 terrain quality of your choice. I love this.
Yeah, that's perfectly good.
But here's the thing. When you're moving, you're not rolling dice, so you're not keeping opportunity. And it has to be a movement action. It has to be a movement action too. It's not any action. It's a movement action, right? So you have to do. There's very few of those. I think maneuver is one of them. I'm not sure what else.
Maneuver is one of them, and there are a lot of techniques that act as movement actions. They'll say as a movement and support action, as a movement and strike action.
So shouldn't that just be an opportunity under those techniques rather than a generic opportunity?
Probably, but I think as a generic action, it allows it to be under every technique that offers you a movement action, right? I don't mind it saying as a movement action because there are so many potential movement actions. The problem is, are players aware of what a movement action is and when to use it?
Yeah.
Because otherwise, this is in a place where it's never going to be seen or used because they're in 2 different areas.
And there are techniques that allow you to ignore terrain already.
There are techniques that allow you to ignore terrain or change terrain.
I'm going to say no on this one. I'm going to skip this one. Unless you are very, you want to go to bat, you want to go to bat for it here.
There are other ways to handle this kind of situation. I like the idea that anybody could really come up with a counter to deal with the terrain penalties that are around them for the most part. But there are also some terrains where I'm like, how are you going to do that?
Yeah.
Like afflicted. How are you going to get rid of the afflicted terrain condition? Right?
So,
like the ones that are spiritually unbalanced. How do you get around
Here's the thing. Concealed, like, if you're concealed in obscuring terrain by 2 rangebands, you're technically invisible. No one can see you. But if I do a maneuver check and move and then use this, suddenly I can see you.
Oh, but there's only people enough for me to lose sight of you then on my next turn.
Yeah. Oh, I see all of them. Guys, they're there. This makes no sense.
Yeah.
This is silly.
In context, it makes very little sense. It will be used very, very rarely, which is the problem.
Yeah. Like, I can see, hey, during a movement action, ignore 1 terrain quality if it's like, we're thinking first off is ensnaring terrain. It's difficult terrain. It takes more movement to get through. The second one would be dangerous terrain. It's really hard to, like, get through it without taking damage, like fire or broken glass or that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But there are way more terrains, like, I don't know, spiritual and balanced terrain.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah,
it doesn't make sense. Like, don't worry, guys, I did a maneuver check and now I can cast spells better.
Yeah, now we can all cast spells better.
What? That makes no sense. Okay.
Yeah, I ran really fast and the gods are happy now.
Is Sasha trying to say something?
Sasha said, it totally makes sense. I ran so fast that I got out of your way and now you can cast spells better.
But it's the spirits. It's a spiritual imbalance. Okay. Reduce the severity of the next critical strike you suffer before your next turn by 1 per opportunity spent this way. This is confusing. And nobody's ever used this. Reduce the severity of the next critical strike you suffer before the start of your next turn by 1 per spent this way. I mean, this is technically a useful
this is a technique. This is a HEDA technique wrapped up in an opportunity.
That said, listen to this. It's on Earth Stance. What happens when you're on Earth Stance?
You can't get critically struck. So they can't spend opportunity to affect you with things.
So reducing the severity of the next critical strike you suffer before your next turn
has to be something done from a technique that auto critical strikes you, or is like, I am bleeding profusely and I am just tough enough to withstand it. Those are the only ways that you're really getting this.
I mean, you do take an automatic critical strike if you're
bleeding, yeah.
If you're incapacitated, right?
But are you on a stance while incapacitated?
Yes, you are on a stance. You can do everything except roll dice. If you can roll dice to resist, but you can't take any actions to roll dice, which means you can't get opportunities either.
Yep.
This is it's so silly. Like, we didn't play test this.
Yeah. We didn't see that one coming. This would be, in my opinion, a opportunity to add this as a technique that says, if you're on whatever stance, it doesn't matter the stance, but here's a way to reduce the severity of critical strikes by taking an action on your turn to refortify yourself. This is an Earth Kiho or an Earth Kata that allows you to solidify your stance to take less of a critical strike on your next turn.
So this is
before your next turn.
This is an interesting one. I'm not sure why this is in conflicts or martial skill example. Do not apply one of your disadvantages to checks until the end of your next turn.
Let's say you're lame. If you have a physical disadvantage, this is very helpful to or blind in one eye.
Yeah. I'm not saying it's not. I'm not saying it's not bad. I'm just saying this could apply to every disadvantage in every situation. I don't see why this isn't. This is for conflicts only. Does it break the game if it's in other places?
This should be a general opportunity.
Yes.
And the only thing I would say is it costs 1 less on Earth Stance.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's put it in. I like this rule. We're putting it in.
Yeah. You can get around your disadvantages for a brief time, especially if you're very earthy.
So is that 3 opportunity or 2 on void, or is it 2 or 2 on earth, or is it 2 opportunity
Actually,
and 1 on earth?
You said void, and when you said that, it makes way more sense to me that this be a void technique.
We got a lot on void already. We have
okay, then earth.
We have 2.
But it makes sense to say, like, if I'm tapping into my inner reservoir of heroism to overcome a disadvantage, makes so much sense on void.
But earth is Earth traditionally is willpower.
That's true. So I don't mind it staying on earth. I'd say, yeah.
But how many opportunities should it cost is the question.
3 go down to 2 on earth, or 2 go down to 1 on earth.
That's the
depends on how often you want players to be able to overcome their disadvantages, and if that answer is not often, then I think 3 is the right answer.
Yeah, I think 3 is the right answer too.
Because if you're saying I want them to be able to overcome their disadvantages all the time, then keeping it at 2 or and down to 1 means that if they're on Earth stance, by the very like nature of having a 2 in Earth and like 1 in a skill, you're most likely going to be able to overcome that disadvantage.
Okay. Fire, conflict. Choose another character in the scene. Increase the TN of the next check they make before their end of their next turn by 1 if it does not include you as a target. I find this perfectly fine. In fact, I just take off that last part. If it does not include you in a target, I just say it increases the TN of their next check by 1. Yeah,
you're just making somebody else's life harder.
Yeah.
Why not?
It's it costs 2, but 1 on fire stance. That makes sense to me. I get what they're trying to do. They're trying to say, hey, you have to attack me. Don't attack my friend. But I mean, just...
Yeah, this is a taunt.
Yeah, but why not just to everything?
Yeah.
I don't see why that's a problem. During an attack action check, increase the TN of the next check the target makes to resist a critical strike. This is the one we had a big old problem with that we don't... Yeah. Okay. Other characters must receive 2 strife to choose you as a target of their attack or scheme actions until the start of your next turn. This is a technique.
This is a technique.
This is a shuji, yeah. Water, room 1 fatigue. We already covered that. During an attack action, ignore 1 point of the target's physical resistance per opportunity spent this way. I like this. I like this a lot. I don't know why it's water. I think this would be air, but I like this a lot. What do you think?
I think it could be air. I don't know. I don't mind it though.
Okay. Well, like I said, all of these are subject to change. We're just, here's our big list so far, everybody. Here's our list of.
Because it feels to me like you're fainting, right?
Yeah.
Reducing somebody's physical defense because you're opening them up for more trauma or more like potent assault, and that sounds like a feint to me, and that feels more air focused than water focused.
Okay, we're almost done with the first page, and then we'll call it a day here. Boom. Move 1 range band. We have to put in that. Yeah, move 1 range band.
Move 1 range band is fine. If you're on water, make it 1 less. That's it.
Or water. Move 1 range band.
Or keep it at 2 costs, even on water stance. And if you're on water stance, you just move an extra range band.
Yeah, I like that. Move
It still costs
one
2, but
and
if you're on water stance,
only
you can move
one
2
extra range band if on water stance. It's not one per, you know.
1 per opportunity.
Well, is it plus? I don't think it's plus.
No, not
Yeah.
1 plus. You just happen to be spending 2 opportunity and moving.
Yeah, you're right. Move 1 extra range band if on water stance. That I like that. That's good. Absolutely perfection. And the last is the void. During your next attack action, ignore 1 range terrain quality of your choice. People were using this, said to use this if people, that technique that basically makes the terrain obscuring because you're telling everybody to move backwards and forwards to disguise their numbers or whatever. It's a they said it was like at low levels that's really like a super powerful technique that a lot of people have. And people said, well, just put your NPCs on void stance and then they can start ignoring that terrain quality. And that gets around that technique. And I was like, that's interesting.
Yeah, but it only focuses on 1 person at a time, right?
Nope. Ignore 1 terrain quality of your choice. During the next attack action check you make before the end of your next turn, ignore 1 terrain quality of your choice.
Yeah. But it's what you make, not what your group will make. So every NPC would then have to go on void stance to do this, and then they delay a turn. It still basically negates 1 turn of theirs, effectively.
Yeah. But I mean, I don't like these things that say just ignore the thing that I put in front of you without technique. Like, I'm the game master. I set up these cool things, and then a player is just like, well, we can all just do this. And now we've and it's like, shouldn't this be a technique again?
I feel like, again, this should be a technique, but also I feel like it should be an even more streamlined technique of like a Shuji, maybe like a rank 2 Shuji that lets you and your allies within a certain radius of you ignore a terrain quality.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
During a support, like, it doesn't need to be in general, like, because we're trying to condense our list.
Yeah. Doesn't need to be an opportunity thing.
During a support action check, increase your initiative value by 1 per opportunity spent this way. Doesn't need to be. This doesn't. Ignore the effect of 1 condition you are suffering by the end of your next turn. I like this. You can ignore bleeding by using 2 opportunity. I didn't even know this existed. I like this a lot.
Yeah.
Let's do this. Is this a void thing or is this an earth thing?
I think it's a general thing. And I think this is one that costs less. I also think it should be more expensive, like 3, and it should cost less on, I would say, earth or void. Or keep it exactly as it is and say it costs 2 no matter what stance you're on to ignore a condition for a turn.
I like it a lot. I think it's great. Okay, we've got to end this. I know there's a whole nother page of opportunities we got to go through.
And that's just the opportunities in the base book. There are so many other sources of opportunities that we have to.
So, guys, tell us what you think. I'm going to put up the list of the opportunities we created. This is our new opportunity list, patent pending. Tell us what you think. Is this a better streamlined version? Is this a group of opportunities you'd like to use in your game rather than the standard list? Or do you need all of the other what did we not put in here that you think is necessary? What rebates or stance increase for an opportunity did we get wrong? You tell us. We want to know. Thank you for watching. Live. We try and do a live stream every Sunday around this time, which is, I want to say 2:00 Pacific. Sure. Let's say that.
Do that. Yeah.
Sometimes we're doing this. Other times we're doing live reviews, or we're just talking about role-playing game stuff. So if you love role-playing games, you love that tabletop, come on in, talk to us. If you're watching this as a recorded stream, thank you so much. Give us your thoughts down in the comments.
Leave us some comments.
We're a small channel. I pretty much get to see all of the comments. Other than that, from Tarek, and my name is Corey, go roll some dice.